ground bait, where do we start? There's that many companies do that many ground baits, they've got them coming out areas. It can get confusing, there's that many. Do you use sweet fish meals, do you use non-fish meals, do you use cereal mixes? So got a couple of hours this evening, come down on river to do a bit of fishing, and I thought what I'm going to do is try and clear your minds a little bit about what ground baits are, what they do, and personally what I use. Catch a lot of fish on them, I get a lot of messages all the time, what ground bait would you use for this, what ground bait would you use for that. So I'm going to give you a little go through of what ground baits I use on the deep canals that I fish and on rivers, and if it helps you, good, and if you've got a different opinion, there's that many out there. They all do the same job, but you've got to use them in different ways, so we'll go through it. So for my Maine Roach line, as I call it, there's 2 ground baits that I like to use, well 3 possibly, but 2 main ones, and they're the Black Roach from the So Natural range and Black River. Do also like the Black Lake as well. It's got a little bit more coriander in, but the 2 main go-to ones are Black Roach and Black River. Probably noticed there that they're both black. My opinion around this is I like a dark mix, especially on them deep canals. Settles on the bottom, and when the fish come over it, I think that they don't silhouette as much for pike, so in my opinion I don't think you get as many pike strikes over your actual bait. You still can't stop them taking them when you're in, but I think they feed that bit more confidence on because it don't glow on a spot. They're hoovering over it, picking little bits of bait up that you've offered in with them, and I think they're a really good mix. Other reasons I like them mix is the texture, so they mix up lovely. They're quite sticky, so as I've said, I fish deep canals, so you can either make them really sticky, so add a little bit more water, or make them a bit finer and they fluff up more. There's so much you can do with them. It's good when you can squeeze them into a tight ball, so they'll go in and take a little bit longer to break up, or you can just nip them and bits will fall off. But with them being really sticky, if you've got to pack them full with particles, if there's a lot of fish, like Aaron Cold where I fish, there's a lot of fish in there. If you want to get a lot of particle in, a lot of worm, some ground baits, if they don't bind together much, you'll find the balls hard to make. Whereas with this mix, it's really sticky, so you can pack the particles in, get the balls made, and even with like a nice little pinch, you can throw the ball in and it'll stay as a ball until it hits the water and starts breaking up on the way down, depending on how much you squeeze it. So as I say, my go-to mix, I like to base it around the Black Roach, so that's always my base mix. So I'll always have a bag of that, and depending on like depths, if there's any flow, if there's more skimmers, I'll add the river. So I prefer to add a bit more of this for the skimmers and hybrids. And then if I'm fishing for more roach, I like the lake. There's a bit more coriander in the lake, and it's proven that fish, especially roach, love coriander, and it's obviously got a bit of hemp and everything in it, so brilliant bait for that. When I'm fishing with the So Natural range, I do like to add the Fluoro Rocks. So you've probably seen a bit about these on market, and if you aren't, I'll give you a quick run through what they are. As you can see, these are well used, and it's not just a gimmick that I'm like, oh, use these because Sonu sell them and they're good. Actual fact, I do use them. Do they work? Don't know, have I got confidence in? 100% I've got confidence in these. It's the fact that they don't do any harm. In my opinion, if you've got a handful of ground bait with a flex of them in, it imitates like your pinkies and your maggots, but I think the fish come along, pick up the Fluoro Rock. I don't think they eat it, I think they spit it back out, but then another fish comes along and picks it up. So in theory, the fish are coming to investigate, trying to eat what they think's a pinky or a maggot and spin it back out, so the next fish can then come and investigate. So I think you've always got a bit of colour there in your peg that attracts a fish, come along, pick it up, spit it back out and move on to the next one. Does it work? I think it does. I've caught loads of fish over it, and as you can tell by pot, I'm dead confident in them and I use them. Does it do any harm? 100% it don't. I've caught that many fish over it, it's proven it don't do any harm. So whatever it's not doing any harm, I've got confidence in it, I'm going to keep putting them in. You don't need a full tub, literally just a sprinkle on top, mix them in, few in there, flecks of colour, there we go, job's a good one. Moving on from that, so I'm now using the Pro Thatchers Dark. I use this for mainly my skimmer work and on the tip. So I was using the dark fish meal, but I've moved away from that a little bit and I'm now using dark Thatchers. So it's a high fish meal content is that, and I've found using that sort of ground bait with a high fish meal content you catch a lot of bigger skimmers. So rather than catching, I used to use the F1 on its own a couple of years ago, and I'd catch a lot more fish than most people, but I'd found I'd catch the smaller stamp. Using a higher fish meal content ground bait, especially on the feeder, or catching a lot bigger fish, and obviously bigger fish, bigger weight, you do better in your matches. So I now solely use that on its own, dark thatchers on the feeder, and then on the pole line for skimmers, depending on what size skimmers I'm targeting. So the biggest, if they're just bigger skimmers, I'll use that on its own, and depending on time of year, middle of summer, use that on its own. But is it a better ground bait than this? Must have proven itself that many times. Awesome mix. You've probably heard a lot about the Thatchers and F1 mix, but F1 on its own is also unbelievable. Catches that many skimmers, not only on commercials but rivers, canals. If there were one ground bait that I've got to use, that'd be it. No other question about it. For all round, that is it. But I find if I use that on my own, on its own even, not on my own, on the canal, it's one of them. I think I'm more likely to catch small skimmers, but if that's what's predominantly in there and that's what I'm aiming to target, that's what I'll use. Sometimes I'll put an handful of the thatchers in just to give it that bit of fish meal smell. There's that much of it going in rivers and canals nowadays. I think it's hard to leave it out because I think you're not giving yourself the chance to catch them. I don't think it puts them off. Sometimes if you put it in neat, you can literally not get a bite over it. It's one of them, it's hard to work out. You've got to change around and play with it, and obviously as the weather changes, the amount you put in change, so you can't go up to someone and be like, oh, how much would you put in, because there's no definite answer. You've got to work it out for yourself, play around with it, but I can guarantee it'll catch you a few bigger fish putting the dark thatchers in. Whereas the F1 Sweet, as I said, I used to fish this on the feeder on its own and I'd catch that many fish, but they'd be a lot smaller. If I want bigger fish, I fish thatchers. Use this as my main mix on the pole for the little skimmers, and I put the thatchers in with it. So between these four mixes here, so the F1 dark thatchers, and then the river and the black roach, that is literally all I use for all my canal fishing and my river fishing, natural waters basically. And then, like I say, I do use lake as well, but apart from that, there's not much else that comes with me, apart from the Fluoro Rocks. Gotta love a bit of them. So there you go, guys. If you have got any questions, just drop a comment in the box, like and share, and I'm happy to answer. But like I say, this is just my opinion. Everybody else has their own mixes, and all I can say is if it's working for you, there's no point changing. As long as you keep catching fish, enjoying it, that's what it's all about.